Hey Scroobies, welcome to another episode of Amazing Animation Analysis. Now, have you ever seen an animated show or film and thought to yourself, wow, this amazing animation is amazing, but you're not really sure why it's so amazing. It's just a feeling. Well, in this show, I take that animation, analyze it, and tell you exactly why it's so amazingly animated. And after, you'll never have to feel anything ever again. In today's episode, I'll be analyzing the wonderful anime series Mob Psycho 100%. Mob Psycho is originally a manga written and illustrated by One. That's right, the very same artist that created One Punch Man. And much like One Punch Man, Mob Psycho has gotten an anime adaptation. And this adaptation is created by Studio Bones. This is the rundown of the story. Mob Psycho is about a middle school boy named Shigeo Kageyama, but everyone calls him Mob, which literally means background character. As his name says, he tries to go through life as ordinarily as possible. But there is one problem. Mob is an Esper, and a very powerful one at that. Now you might think that's totally wicked awesome cool, but it's these powers that get Mob into trouble, where Mob and his little brother Ritsu got attacked by some bullies, Mob becoming overly emotional and blacking out, only to wake up with the bullies and his little brother being seriously harmed. You see, Mob can't always control his abilities. If enough stress or emotions pile onto Mob, he reaches a state of 100%, a state in which he tends to go berserk, also upping his psychic powers in the process. In order to help learn how to control his abilities, Mob works as an assistant to Reigen Arataka, a con man and self-proclaimed psychic who has absolutely no powers whatsoever. Together they go on jobs concerning ghosts and hauntings and such. Now Reigen might look like a lying, slimy con artist, and he kinda is, but he has a good heart. He tells the troubled Mob that psychic powers shouldn't be misused or celebrated, and all that's really important in life is to be a good person. Izo! While Mob tries to better himself, he has to deal with cults, getting kidnapped, and even fighting an evil Esper organization. That's a lot of pressure for a little kid. The first season is 12 episodes long, and the animation is beautiful. It uses many different animation mediums, going from pencil animation to ink, pastels, and even animation on glass. These are used to further illustrate and emphasize the emotions the characters are going through. But where the animation really ramps up are in the fight scenes. Amazing choreography, moving backgrounds, smears, kids getting beat up, you name it. It's all in there. One of the most memorable fights in the season is the Koyama vs Mob fight. Story-wise, it's the first fight where Mob really gets tested, and animation-wise it's one of the best in the show. And the coming together of the story and the amazing animation is exactly why many remember this fight as one of the most amazing ones in the show. And that's what I'll be analyzing today. First, a little backstory on the fight. So Ritsu, Mob's little brother, has just awakened to his latent psychic powers, and he's going a little crazy with them, cleansing the world of trash. Then Mob turns up, realizes Ritsu has got psychic powers too, congratulates him and apologizes to the trash for all the trouble his little brother has caused, being the good older brother he is. That's when one of the evil Espers, called Koyama, arrives. He jumps off the building, smashes Ritsu to the floor and punches Mob. Koyama is part of an evil organization called the Claws, and his goal in this scene is to capture Ritsu, and all that stands in his way is Mob. The battle starts with a few scuffles, Koyama kicking Mob and Mob attacking Koyama. Koyama realizes Mob isn't an easy target to beat, so he uses a special move called Telekinetic Helix. With it, he can punch through Esper's psychic barriers, which happens to be exactly what Mob uses to defend himself from attacks. Uh-oh. Mob gets his ass beat. Ooh, this boy gets the shit kicked out of him. But after beating the shit out of Mob, and once again punching his brother Ritsu, he's gone a little too far. Cause this sets Mob off and now he's 100% overflowing with emotions of animosity. Powered up, he gives Koyama the beating of a lifetime. Smacking him up, smacking him down. Koyama counterattacks some, but they're not in the same league anymore. Koyama, being out of options, uses a sleeping spray and puts Mob to sleep. Koyama grabs Ritsu and escapes.
Mission complete!
Now this fight is pretty long, and there are a lot of shots I didn't even include in the summary. So all the small fry shots you can just get out of the way. In this episode I'll analyze the 3 biggest attacks. These are the best of the best of the best. No messing around. Let's power up and overflow our emotions with 100% learning. That's not an emotion. So the attacks we're gonna talk about are Koyama kicking Mob, Koyama beating the shit out of Mob, and Mob's big counterattack. So Koyama powers up with his telekinetic helix. Mob braces himself and Koyama attacks. Koyama flashes towards Mob, punches him and penetrates his barrier. He grabs Mob's head and in comes a knee. He kicks Mob so hard that he flies off into the sky, where Koyama casually watches Mob go. Mob flies up high into the air and he starts tumbling down.
It all comes tumbling down, tumbling down, tumbling down.
Mob drops down, gasping for air, as the menacing Koyama walks over. First up, the punch doesn't feel that strong to me. I know it's supposed to be so fast that we can't see it, but we don't see Koyama with his arm up, so we don't know the trajectory of the punch. And we don't see a frame of impact, so we can't feel the punch either. In this shot, for example, we know the trajectory of the punch and there's impact, resulting in a stronger punch. We'll talk about this one later. What does feel strong is the head drag and the kick. Koyama grabs Mob, and this pose feels very strong. Look how arched Mob is, and how Koyama's arm is oppressing Mob's head, pushing it downwards. Something like this would feel a lot weaker. Having this arched back and the hand forward greatly increases the distance of the pull, making it feel harder. Having Koyama pull on Mob's head and the body and arm flop behind gives the characters weight. It takes a bit of energy to pull all of Mob towards Koyama. In comes the knee. It looks good. It looks fine. Not as good as this leg, which I definitely put in S tier. This one is more of an A tier when I think about it. The animators crank up the dial by animating this on ones. That's a new drawing every single frame, as opposed to twos, holding a drawing for 2 frames. This sudden shift to ones increases the impact and gives us this wow factor. Wow! Then it cuts to the big kick. Just look at this pose. Koyama is kicking up with all his strength. His body is arching up. Just looking at this pose makes you feel like the leg naturally wants to go up too. And look at Mob. He's completely wrapped around Koyama's leg. The shot starts here. The kick lands with energy smears going upwards, giving us more speed and direction. Then eases into the final pose. The special effects and the camera shake all add to the power. But the poses really make it work. And let's not forget the editing. This shot needs the 2 previous shots to feel even harder and stronger. And once again, we slowly see Mob going from shocked to excruciating pain. Sweat drops start forming, his eyes are bulging. We've never seen Mob like this. This means trouble. Mob flies up high into the air and slowly starts tumbling down. We start off in his face for extra impact. And you know, Mob Psycho isn't just a cool show where everyone's cool. Ah, you hit me. Nobody's ever made me bleed before. No. Here, people make some expressive faces. Faces do not leave anything out of the imagination. And there isn't just blood coming out of Mob's face, but also snot drippings and tears, further giving it emotional impact. Making the body come up first and the arms dragging behind connects the shot with the rest of the attack. Mob got kicked upwards stomach first, so naturally that's the part that flies up highest in the air. Mob smashes down on the floor and flops around. Flopping around like this shows Mob in a pathetic state. This show isn't afraid to show its characters looking like shit. But for Mob, this is just the beginning, because Ritsu starts screaming for his brother, which he should, because and it looks like I'm once again about to analyze a kid getting beat up. Is that what my channel is about? Beating the shit out of kids? Maybe it is. Hell yeah, let's go! Koyama pulls Mob up and punches through his barrier. It's really gonna get down now. He kicks him, punches, starts racking up the combo meter, and finishes with a big double-fisted punch. But he ain't done yet. He punches Mob again for good measure, and still some more. He only stops when Ritsu intervenes, who he also thanks for his troubles, ending the combo with a 17-hit mid-brother swapperoonie.
What incredible technique!
Koyama picks Mob up by the collar and gets ready to punch. In the movement, Mob's neck gets stretched to extreme lengths, and his head squashes up and down in a rubbery way. This is to emphasize how beaten Mob is. He's like a deflated husk of himself, without any wants or needs, floating on the currents of life. Then Koyama punches through Mob's energy shield. First, Koyama pushes Mob forward, putting him in the prime position to punch. The push starts at Mob's chest, which causes Mob's head to drag behind and lean downwards. This gives Mob more of a helpless feeling, flopping around, which is a big contrast to what happens later. Just a little tease, so stay tuned. Please, come on, don't leave. Koyama then gives a little pull to tighten his grip and hold Mob steady. In the pull, there's this little smear, giving it more of a jerky feel. Then Mob gets punched. The punch comes in hard, but slows down to start breaking through the energy shield. Before it breaks, Koyama's hand disappears for a single frame. Then there's a flash, and Koyama's fist is inside Mob's face. There's another stop of 3 frames where Koyama starts pushing in Mob's face. Then he's punched away. The stop at the barrier and Mob's face makes everything feel harder and stronger. It takes some strength to destroy the barrier, making the barrier feel strong. And it takes some strength to make Mob fly away, giving Mob a feeling of weight. And this all lends extra strength to the punch itself. If it goes through all that, must be a powerful punch. In the next shot, Koyama roundhouse kicks Mob, and sweat flies everywhere.
Sweat! Ooh!
Now what makes the kick feel so hard is the way Mob's neck is stretched out, his head being so far away from his body, and his body needing some time to catch up to the head. This really gives a feeling that the head is almost being kicked off. Also, in this frame, the stretched out smear makes his head snap back into the next frame, making it all look more snappy. This sort of head snap can also be seen in real life boxing matches. The sweat flying out of Mob also helps with the explosive feeling.
Ooh, that sweat!
Next, Koyama gives Mob a punch. This punch just does a lot of stuff a good punch should do. Move the body first, let the arm linger, hold on the punch for impact, with Mob's head starting to wrap around the fist. Then the quick acceleration and the slow motion aftermath. It's cool in this frame that they remove Mob's head completely and only show the fist. I had no idea you could do things like this, but it makes the action feel a lot faster. And look at this, Mob's cheek wraps around his face and slowly starts flapping back, giving it all more snap. It's fat, wobbling side to side. Koyama gives Mob 2 punches. Ritsu is starting to get a little worried now. Maybe you should do something now, Ritsu. Before it's too late? Nah, Mob can handle it. 2 punches, 2 kicks, an elbow, another kick, and a double-fisted slam. This feels really devastating. The way Koyama moves feels very improvised. He just goes from attack to attack, without caring about his fighting form or anything. He's not worried about a counterattack. It's like he's practicing on a sack of potatoes. This makes it feel like the situation is completely helpless. Oh, and by the way, in the manga, this is just one panel. These animators must have really wanted to animate a kid getting beat up. And kudos to them. I mean, if that's your dream, you should go for it, man. Mob's body gets tossed around with every attack, and in this angle we can see all his facial expressions, further emphasizing his helplessness. This double kick looks really cool. Koyama turns into the kick, adding his body weight. He picks his leg all the way up. And I just like to say that it's a good decision they gave his shoes a red sole. This way, the shoe stands out more with the background, and makes us register better what's happening. In this kick, Koyama turns his weight downwards. Turning into the kick like this adds all the body weight of Koyama, giving it extra power. He does the same with the elbow. First moving in, picking up his arm and smashing it into Mob. And see, with this turn, he's in prime position to turn his hips and throw a back kick. Koyama lets himself fall into the direction of the kick. He stretches himself all the way out and turns into the punch. Letting the arms linger around so long, and this stretch makes the punch feel extra hard. This makes sure the distance between the start point and the point of the hit is the greatest. It's almost like a whip, moving the handle first and whipping the rest around. All you gotta do is get up. Mob is flying around. Not like a sack of potatoes, more like mashed potatoes. But for Koyama, he's not quite mashed enough, and he goes in for a big punch. Potatoes get hit, and Koyama mashes some more. Hell, there's even sweat flying off of Koyama now. Ritsu has finally decided he's had enough, and starts running to help Mob. But to give credit, it looks beautiful. Ritsu swings his arms around as hard as he can to run as quickly as he can. And he's not only going towards the camera, he's also moving up vertically, almost falling in the beginning to standing upright. He hops up, only to dip down as anticipation for his big scream. What works really well here is Ritsu's hair, clinging to his head when he's moving up, and flying upwards when he stops at the top. This gives the pull-up even extra speed. Moving his head first to the left, then to the right, makes it feel more three-dimensional, as opposed to just moving forward. And it gives a little extra snap. You did it, Ritsu. You cared. Koyama gives Mob another 2 punches just for fun, and Ritsu runs in, grabs him and tells him to stop. But Koyama enjoys a little battered steak with his mashed potatoes, so in he goes to complete the meal. Then all the pressure on Mob starts to rise, and he goes into a 100% state of animosity. And Koyama is in for a treat. And I'm not talking about a delicious mashed potato steak meal, if you know what I mean. Yeehaw! Mob is powered up and pulls Koyama into the floor. Before Koyama can even manage to stand up, Mob pulls him off the ground, grabs his big, dumb face and smashes him against the wall. He pulls him way up in the air, where Koyama tries to resist. But this time Mob's barrier is too strong. Mob flies downwards,
Just keeps tumbling down, tumbling down, tumbling down. All turns to nothing.
and super power bombs Koyama back into the alley of Seasoning City. Bet you didn't know it was called that, huh? Probably thought it was Tokyo or something. Well, now you know. First up, I love the switch to ink, showing us how Mob's emotions have changed. The same goes for these scratchy lines in the next shot. I also like the bright pattern for her psychic powers. It's so simple yet very recognizable. It stands out from the rest of the show, but in a way that fits too. Koyama gets smashed into the ground, breaking the entire floor and everything around him. What the animators want from these shots is to show us how much more powerful Mob has become. This is immediately apparent when Koyama's head gets blown back, as he frantically tries to resist Mob's powers. What works really well is that Koyama's flesh gets blown away while his body is still barely holding on. Koyama is being pulled downwards, his flesh and shoulders being dragged first. Then the rest goes. His body drops down and we can already see the ground being destroyed below him. In the next shot he's still standing, but quickly gets smashed down. This is a fun smear, and we see that Koyama's upper body and face are going down first. This makes it feel like he's still resisting, trying everything to hold on. The camera zooms out to reveal the entire destruction. In the next shot, Koyama tries to frantically hold on, with sweat flying everywhere. Then Mob pulls him through blocks and bricks, and Koyama gets smashed into his hand. What works well here is Koyama's struggle and his erratic facial expressions. And how he gets pulled out of this shot is really cool. His face gets pulled, and his eyes start leaving his sockets. Then his coloring gets pulled out of his line art, and his line art disappears. It's such a creative way to show the strength of Mob. In this shot, the blocks converge on Koyama while he's being pulled towards the camera, racking up the damage. The next shot shows a point of view of Koyama as he's about to be grabbed by Mob. The pastel art style makes it more otherworldly and menacing. It shows us how Koyama could view Mob's spirit. This also gives a better link into the next shot, priming us for the idea that Mob is about to grab Koyama. Without the shot, it gets a little more confusing. See? The way Koyama is grabbed is really awesome. It just feels so powerful. Let's talk about Mob first. He's just one drawing, unmoving like a rock, unlike before where he's being pulled every which way. There isn't even a slight change in him while he catches Koyama. This makes it feel like he is indeed a rock, an immovable object. Koyama, on the other hand, still has the color being pulled out of him. He flies in and completely reverses his body in one frame, giving the slam immense impact. Suddenly his line of action is opposite of what it was. A line of action being a line you can pull through the character to boil down the essence of the pose in one simple shape. Like this, or like this, or like this. Okay, thank you. His face is being wrapped over Mob's hand and bounces back into a normal shape. And from this point on, Koyama's face is stuck to Mob's hand. He tries to wiggle, pull, and grab, but it's too tight. He can't move his face even an inch. And what's cool is that he doesn't just move in a boring side view way. Look at his arm being twisted forward and this leg coming towards the camera. This frantic, uncontrolled movement shows how strong Mob's psychic powers are and how much energy Koyama is willing to expend. But Mob, he ain't moving, man. He ain't moving. Koyama tries to desperately resist, but gets picked up and gets head slammed into the wall, breaking much of it in the process. The slam looks great, although it would have been better if it was a little kid getting slammed. But I guess we gotta make do, huh? Mob slowly picks up Koyama and pushes him away. The smears are really great. It feels like an overhanded push, and it kinda reminds me of Piccolo's arm throw. Because it feels like Mob is extending his arm, making the push feel super fast. The camera catches up to Koyama's face being slammed into the wall, and Mob pushes him in even deeper. Koyama's eyes bulging out of his head for extra effect. There's just so much you can do with these facial expressions. It's a fun way to show these emotions, making us feel more for the characters. Meanwhile, Ritsu is on the floor again, not feeling sorry for Koyama. But maybe they'll come later, huh, Ritsu? You gonna come in later? Nah, he ain't coming. Mob isn't done with Koyama. He disrespected his brother after all. Ooh yeah, and Koyama's in for a world of hurt, brother. It's time for the finale and the biggest attack yet. Mob pulls Koyama up all the way into the sky, blowing up pipes and destroying walls. Koyama tries attacking with his helix bomb punches, but it's no use. Mob starts taking him down. Flying towards the ground and smashing him into another dimension. Well, more into space, I guess, destroying much of the surroundings in the process. Now in this shot, I don't know why we're seeing the gutter explode first, since the camera quickly moves past it. But it looks cool, so yeah? The camera moves, and we see Mob flying up. They fly off so fast that they're red hot. Koyama powers up and attacks Mob with a big punch. It does nothing. This is to dispel our feelings, right? That we don't think, nah, why doesn't he just use the helix thing attack? He did. It doesn't work. Why doesn't he use Kaioken? But Tien, he is using Kaioken. The punch begins on Koyama's fist. We turn around to follow the fist as it hits Mob. The impact frames are really cool, like a big cross that hits Mob, the energy being dispelled outwards. What also works well is that the purple helix energy dissipates, making the attack feel useless. Mob slowly pushes Koyama downwards and starts picking up speed, so much so that they ignite. The cameras move downwards and we see this fiery ball flash by. The first explosion showing us that they passed the sound barrier, emphasizing the immense speed. I really like these trailing bits of fire, like they're pieces of clothing or the air itself that sets aflame. In the next shot, we follow the ball and the surroundings get this dark shadow cast upon them. making us feel like the ball is so bright, brighter than the sun. And they use the ball passing here to swap out the painted background for an animated one, so they can zoom in even further and in a more impactful way. We move down into the abandoned building, wouldn't want anyone getting hurt. And in slow motion we see how the building gets affected by this attack. They burn a hole into it, making the ball's energy explode outwards. A light shines on Mob, and the building explodes, which cuts nicely into the next shot. Mob flies down to the camera, turning into a somewhat evil apparition. Pulling Mob in and pushing Koyama away prepares us for the big smash, putting more distance in between them. The next sequence looks super amazing. It begins with floors of a building quickly passing by. The building starts to crack, and with a flash we see Mob smashing Koyama down. In a sort of enlightened state, we see the cosmos. The stars, a solar eclipse, and the entire surrounding being shattered and destroyed. Showing us space in this attack gives us a feeling that this is inhuman. It gives us a feeling of being tiny. In essence, our powers being tiny compared to the power of Mob. So powerful that in the next shot, it rips the rendering off the background, showing us a sketch underneath. That's a cool fourth wall breaking technique, something you feel more than you actually see. The attack is so grand, it destroys the windows of the neighboring building. But after all the pulling up, pushing down, and the space-defying smashes, this doesn't really feel that grandiose anymore. In the next shot, some smoke dissipates, while we see the result of the attack. The ground still being hot from the big crash. And Koyama is defeated. Or is he? We know he ain't, but it looks like he is. Come on. Then the fight goes on for a little while. Punches, wall throws, sleeping sprays. In the end, Koyama picks up Ritsu and runs away. And that's it.
Mission complete!
Whew, dang. What a fight, huh? What makes me remember it the most is that Mob gets challenged for the first time in his life. And the animation does it 100% justice. Get it? And even a little more, making the fight feel as impactful as it should be. The story, the animation, it all comes together. Like a beautiful steak with a side order of mashed potatoes. That's it for this episode. If you like this one, be sure to check out this episode where another kid gets beat up, although it's just a single punch. And a special thanks to all my patrons. You make sure I can keep making content and that this channel can go on. Thanks for watching and bye bye. See ya!